All right, Angela, thank you for coming up here. I never knew TV coming out to Jersey. Pleasure to
No
have you. All right.
problem.
All right. I want to talk about the work you've been doing with pregnant single women, right?
Mhm.
Please explain to the viewers about that before we get into it.
Auntie Angie's House. I decided to start Auntie Angie's House after watching the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And in watching the overturning of Roe v. Wade, I noticed that a lot of our black leaders, black congressional members, or anybody that represents the black community basically have made it seem as though black women, can't survive without abortion, or that we have to have abortion, or that abortion is some form of reparations or something like that. Then we're also watching that we have a black maternal health crisis where they are saying, and this is verbatim on the whitehouse.gov, that black women are 3 times likely to die during childbirth compared to white women, regardless of their income or education. So to me, that statement was profound because I know that black women have been giving birth since the beginning of time. I also know that my grandmother gave birth to 10 children in a shed. These were my aunts and uncles. They were all healthy, and they were all born alive. So I'm under the impression that if black women are now suddenly dying 3 times likely compared to white women,
Regardless of income
or education,
or education.
then that means that someone is intentionally killing us. And I don't mind going on record saying that. And so Auntie Angie's House to me was a solution, because I'm like, okay, you're telling us we have a black maternal health crisis. Black women are scared. What are we doing about the black maternal health crisis? Abortion is not the solution to the black maternal health crisis. If the black mother is dying, giving birth to the baby, and the black baby is dying during the abortion process, then what black lives don't matter. So does black life matter or not? And that is what this is all about. We can't say that black life matters without understanding the origin of black life.
In your experience, how was your pregnancies?
Well, me, I had 5 natural births, but I was never told about the benefits of the placenta. And I think that there's a lot of black women that experience that. We've gone into the hospital, we've given birth to our babies. They never told us about, the benefits of the placenta, keeping the placenta, even asking us if we wanted the placenta. What did they do with the placenta? Like you say, your wife, many other women have been rushed into a C-section. Why? Because it's $30,000 more. And let's just think about it. Birth is natural, right? It's not a common thing that women are supposed to be getting cut in half to give birth to a baby. And there are also benefits for the baby coming down through the birth canal. So is it something more sinister happening? That's the question that we have. And that's why Auntie Angie's House is so important, because we need to get back to the natural ways of doing everything. The natural ways of birthing our children, the natural ways of creating our children, the natural ways of feeding our children, back to organic foods. We just need to get back to what's natural.
When should single women start dating again, and when should they introduce new men to their child?
Wow, I'm gonna say that's probably on a case by case basis. I don't know if there's a certain time. You know what I'm saying? I think that of course you do need to take time to get to know a person before you introduce them to their child. I think that that's important, but I would say that's probably something that needs to be determined on a case by case
And,
basis.
and the reason I brought it up was because a lot of abuse that takes place comes from this rotation of random people being around the child. So
Yep.
that's why I was saying, based on your facility, if you provided information in regards to a time frame, or, as you said, not necessarily a process, but I don't know how to say it, a better understanding of the person before they come around the child.
Yes, that's very important. You want to make sure that you're protecting the atmosphere that your child is in. You want to make sure that you're protecting the energy. You want to make sure you're protecting the words that they're hearing. You want to make sure you're protecting what they're seeing. So I think that that is very, very important. But for us in our facility, because we're dealing with pregnant women, the father is kind of, if he's not out of the picture, we kind of encourage him to be involved in the picture, because we're all about family reunification. We want to keep the family together. We don't want to pull them apart. The Negro Project was Margaret Sanger and a bunch of her buddies going around to all of the pastors in the black community, telling them that the best way to help us is to help us control our birth rate. Now, for us, we thought that it was some form of prize that a white woman came up with this great idea that we could save money or better our lives by controlling how many children that we have. And so they intentionally went to the black community, as we've seen so many times before, and targeted the black preachers to target their congregations with this notion of birth control. But in reality, for them, they wanted to get rid of the less desirables. The less desirables, of course, that was us. And I think Margaret Sanger was quoted as saying one day, the best way to get rid of a nigga is to kill him before he is born. So that was the Negro Project. It wasn't about birth control. It was about controlling our birth rate. They looked at us like roaches. You know, you get one roach, you try to hurry up and kill it before it have a bunch of babies. Yeah. So it was extermination.
All right. So with this whole abortion vibe, right? When people speak about abortion, like, I don't hear anyone speaking about more preventive care in regards to either just, I don't know the technical term for it, pulling out.
Pregnancy
or
prevention.
Pregnancy prevention or using a condom. You know, I think that needs to be more of the push in regards to just this abortion, because this is the issue I have in regards to people having kids right now. You have a lot of people who have no income, no shelter, no skill, right? And yes, if you want to improve yourself, please do, but improve yourself before the child comes, because you're putting the child in a rough spot.
That's true.
And it's a high probability the child's going to grow up in an environment that's not conducive to them being balanced or being able to thrive in life.
Well, that's the excuse that they use to abort us. They say there's a chance that the child might not be great. But I know a whole lot of people that came from poverty, and we did what we had to do, and we made it. I'm one of them too. So that's definitely not the excuse that we want to use when we're determining who's allowed to live or who has to die. I think that what you said is so important. If we took all of this money that they're putting into abortion and put into pregnancy prevention, then there wouldn't be a need for abortion, because if we don't create the life, then we don't have to end the life. So the question is, like you said, why is it so much focus on abortion? Why so much money in abortion? Well, you have to think about it like this. I don't know anybody that has walked into an abortion clinic and walked out with the child's remains. If you're in a hospital and you have a miscarriage, they will give you the baby, they will give you the child's remains, tell you to go bury it in the backyard, have a funeral, do whatever. But if you go to an abortion clinic, you are never giving those child's remains. Now, that's a whole lot of brand new eyes, hearts, livers, okay? Listen, they talk about organ trafficking. I don't know. What are they doing with the babies? I don't know. And why is our government so focused on, during COVID, they gave Planned Parenthood $80 billion.
To do what?
To kill babies.
They gave them $80 billion?
$80 billion for abortion.
They gave $80 billion.
Lizzo gave Planned Parenthood $500,000. Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, Mackenzie Scott, after COVID, you remember COVID? Everybody was locked down. Could nobody make no money. None of us could work our jobs. We were all ordering from Amazon. I'm talking about, they made so much money during COVID. Right after COVID, after they made all that money, she donated $250 million to Planned Parenthood because she wanted to help black women with reproductive rights. I'm sorry, Miss Mackenzie, but as a black woman, you're not being my friend by giving me money to kill my black children. If you want to help me, then let's give black women other resources. Let's focus on pregnancy prevention. Let's talk about a down payment on a home maybe for that single mother. Let's talk about some financial literacy so that mother can be in a position to take care of her children. Because if you think about our government when it comes to abortion, it's a whole lot easier to pay $400 to get rid of that black baby, right, than to provide a lifetime of welfare in Section 8. And that's the way that they look at it. And I think the black community needs to wake up and understand that we can't cry in one voice saying, oh, we're an oppressed minority, but we're the first ones in line to abort our votes. We have to understand that there is strength in numbers. And once that life has been created, it don't matter if she 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 9 months. Once that life has been created, there is only one way to end it. Why is it that 70% of abortion clinics are in black communities? We don't have not one fertility clinic. See, we get abortion clinics, they get fertility clinics. We get abortion clinics, they get fertility clinics. And if you think about something else that you just said a little bit earlier on in the interview, we're talking about situations that children are born into where there's no income, they don't have anywhere to stay, they don't have any support. Well, that's the same thing going on at the border. But they don't got abortion clinics at the border. They're telling us as American women, specifically black American women, we need to abort our children. But if you coming across the border with your baby, oh, come to the land of milk and honey, the great land of opportunity. We'll take care of you. Joe Biden even said, I'll give illegal immigrants coming across the border $400,000 a piece. Can you imagine if they were to go to that black single mother living in the hood? Not even $400,000. Offer $4,000, because I know some black women that can make something jump with $4,000. Offer her $40,000. You know why they'll never give us that? Because they know that we'll never need them again. Welfare reminds me of an old man I used to date. I was in a relationship with him for 11 years. He would never marry me, right? But whenever my bills were due, I would tell him he would give me just enough. He had a whole lot of money. He would give me just enough. Rent due, $1,200. He give me $1,200, not 1 cent over, because he knew that every month the rent was due, that I would have to come back to him. He wouldn't give me $100,000 and say, here, baby, bump that, go buy you a house and start you a business, because then he felt like I wouldn't need him. The government system is the same way when it comes to black Americans. They'll never give us enough to get over and get up. It's only enough to make sure we continue to come back every 30 days so that we can remain slaves to their system.
And with the help for people from overseas, is this a diplomatic thing in the sense that I am helping people, but they're not helping the people that needs help? I seem they always play this game, bro, in regards to like they help everyone else, but the most oppressed within their society, they never help.
I can't understand it because, you know, a lot of people wanted to make the term "Make America Great Again" a racist term or a term of racism. And to me, I was always like, well, I'm an American. I live in America. My children are here. My business is here. My home is here. We have Americans right here. And when I look at our government, I look at it like us, right? You're a parent. I'm a parent. So me, I'm the parent of my household. So when I go out and I make my money and I come back with my paycheck, my responsibility is to make sure the bills are paid in my house and to make sure that my children are fed. If I don't do that, then they'll come lock me up and say that I'm neglecting my children, right? So as a parent, I'm not saying that with the money I make that I won't help the children across the street or the children around the corner. I'm just saying that my job and my responsibility is to take care of my household. The government of America has a responsibility to take care of the American citizens. The tax dollars of the American citizens belong to the American citizen. So I'm not saying we don't help other people in need or other countries, but how can you help them without helping your own? We're looking right now up in New York, not too far from here because we're in Philly, where they are demanding that illegal immigrants that have crossed the border be placed in the Roosevelt Hotel. They're sleeping inside of police stations, and that's fine. But what about all of the homeless American citizens that we have? I've never seen them open up a hotel and demand that they place homeless Americans, let alone homeless black Americans. I've never seen that. I've never seen one person in Congress make an announcement and say, open your doors to homeless people in America so they don't have to sleep on the streets. So when is America going to wake up? Make America great for you. How does everybody else come before us? And why are we as black people always fighting somebody else's battle, but when it comes to us, we can't get no help? Everybody talking about, oh, black and brown communities, black and brown community. I haven't seen the brown communities fighting for the black. Now, I'm just saying black people, handle your business because ain't nobody at the border advocating for you.
Can you tell me the government's rationale for not wanting men living in a home where the women are receiving government assistance? Like, what's the government say why they do what they do?
Well, the government wants to be the father. This has all been intentional. Remove the father from the home so we can come in and we can take over. Make sure that the mother is not in the home, that the mother is working, maybe two jobs or whatever, trying to survive, so we can completely indoctrinate that child with whatever it is that we want to indoctrinate them with. So if the father is out of the home, which I think that the original structure of the nuclear family worked best for us. That's my personal opinion. The father is being the provider and the mother has the time to nurture. But when you have the father removed from the home and the mother working 40 to 80 hours a week, then what are we doing? We are sending our children to school every single day, Monday through Friday. And now that teacher has somewhat become the parent, and this school has now taken over the role of parenting. And what are they doing? They are teaching your children. They are indoctrinating your children 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And then when our children grow up and they're 16 and 17 and we're sitting across from them and we realize you don't have the same morals I do. You don't have the same beliefs that I do. You don't have the same educational background that I do. It's because we haven't taught them. We've allowed someone else to teach them. We've allowed someone else to give them their beliefs, their morals, their structure. And we'll be sitting across from our child at 16, 17 years old and not even know who that person is. And I think that it has all been very strategic.
I know you come to this understanding later on in life, right? What would you do differently as a parent if you were a brand new parent?
Homeschool. I would have cherished my relationship with the father better and known how important it was for the children to be raised in a two-parent home. I would have taken away the TV and the telephones and the video games. Anything that we give access to our children's minds can children, the first way that we learn is by modeling behavior. Children are going to emulate what it is that they see. What is it that your children are seeing and what is it that your children are hearing? That's most definitely what I would have done different. School, public school, definite no.
Two things I want you to elaborate more on, right? One, nurturing the relationship with the father, and two, the video games. Most people criticize the TV programs, but they don't necessarily speak about the impact of video games. So can you speak about what you mean more about nurturing the relationship with their father?
Well, the father is important. I think a lot of us as women and young women, we've looked at, this I don't need a man, this black feminism that has taken over. So we've gotten into these mindsets that we can just do it on our own and we don't need a man, even when we are raising young men. And so what we have done is forfeited the position of the father and the relationship of the father based off of our own selfish needs and gains. The father is just as important as the mother. If the father wasn't as important as the mother, then it wouldn't take a father and a mother to create the life. So if it takes a man and a woman to create the life, then most certainly we should believe that it should take a man and a woman to stabilize, maintain, preserve, nurture the life.
One, I'm glad to hear you say that because most women won't acknowledge that. As you mature, when did it click, though, to say, I could have done things differently? At what point in your life, if you remember?
All throughout my life, I think I've said that. But I think seeing now what has happened to the nuclear family and how this feminism movement has completely taken over and destroyed our families, destroyed our children, destroyed our generations, bloodlines. Everything right now is all about we don't need men, we are the men, abort our children, and we're definitely not headed in the right road.
All right. And talk about why you would keep the video games away.
Video games. When I was a young adult raising my children, I realized that I allowed them to partake in video games because video games for me was like a babysitter. When they were playing the video games, I was able to get a break. I was able to work on some things that I needed
it 100,
to.
Bro.
It was a babysitter, right? And what I did not realize was the world that the video games opened my children up to. Especially now where they have all of this gaming and all of these streaming, you really have no idea who your children are talking to, what they're dealing with. And the video game world is it's another world, kind of like the world that we live in. So things that we have to do when it comes to monitoring our children, what they're watching, that stuff needs to be monitored too in video games. The exposure that they have in video games, these people have sex in video games, they do drugs, they rob, they kill, they steal. Another thing that's very important that parents need to pay attention to is the anime, right? Because your children can create a character. What type of character, right, are your children creating? I have a son who has decided that he wanted to transition at the age of 19. When I look back, I realized that every character he ever created was a female. When I never paid attention to that. It never dawned on me. I'm just like, what? I didn't realize that they are trying to make this world that is not a reality an actual reality.
Since you brought that up, in regards to the son, right? I know you have a certain view on the sexualization of children. I don't know exactly your view on the trans things, right? But how was that as a parent, just as a parent, put all that other stuff, how was that a parent? How did you deal with that?
Well, I didn't, because in my house, a child is a child. So we're not even dealing with those type of decisions. I mean, as an adult, yeah, it was still traumatic for me, because you're trying to tell me that after, 19 years of raising you as a male, that all of a sudden you're a female. Now, we're going to talk about common sense. Common sense to me is absolutely not possible. But I think that it's okay. If you want to live your life that way, then you have a right to do that. But it's not okay to force someone else to live in that delusion with you. Don't force me to make myself believe that you're a woman when I know that you're a man living your life as a woman.
Do you think it's a phase, or you think this is an absolute transition? And I noticed the lesbian thing and the gay thing, bro, and a lot of it seemed like attention grabbing, in a sense, like looking for attention and confusion.
Well, for that period of time. It is a lot of attention, because a black, so I have 3 sons, and I've watched my other 2 sons, who are just straight black males, work every single day, don't get half the attention that the one does that lives his life as a woman. Not only does he not get half the attention, they don't get half the notoriety, they don't make half the money. So there is an agenda, because as a straight black man, you are being overlooked, you are being ignored. But if you are a black man that puts a wig on, then your life somehow is more valuable than black women and black men.
I've noticed also too, if you're a homosexual man, you're more accepted in the corporate structure, especially if you're I want to be clear, if you're a feminine acting man, not if you're just a gay guy, and I guess they know or they don't know, but if you're a feminine acting guy, you definitely get more push compared to heterosexual. It's like you're penalized now for being heterosexual.
Well, I think that all of that is strategic as well, because we go back to Section 8. We go back to all of these things that have wanted to remove the man. And any of us that have good sense, any of us that are educated, we know that if there was to ever be, let's just talk about the strategies of war. If there is to be a takeover, what do? They want to remove the strongest people. Who are the strongest? The men are the strongest. Once the masculinity, the strong men are removed, the women and the children are the weakest link. And that is what has happened in our society, because even when I look at my own situation and when I went on Dr. Phil, there was no man there to protect me. The only man that was there was a man in a wig telling me that he was a woman and what he was going to do for my children. So they removed the black man, the toxic masculinity, as they say, and have now replaced him with this infinite black man who, guess what? He's still stronger than me as a woman. So the women and the children are still the most vulnerable in this situation. And they have designed it where if you are a masculine black man, or you were to speak up, or you say something, you be charged with a hate crime. So they've almost pushed men over into silence. And I just feel like it's a complete hostile takeover. I've watched several videos. I've studied sexual predators, being a survivor of sexual abuse myself as a child. And 95% of sexual predators say that they target children that do not have a father.
In regards to the sexual predator thing, was it a teenager or a man?
It was my older cousin. It was a teenager. I was 5 and he was 17.
That seems to be like the high rate of sexual abuse compared to the man-kid thing, you know?
Well, I mean, it's just so much. I think that we've really dropped the ball when it comes to protecting our children, because I think in our generation, a lot of us were forced into silence. Sexual abuse is not something that's new or just start happening. Pedophiles is not something new or just start happening. Maybe we didn't use the pedophiles. Maybe we called them Uncle Charlie or Uncle Chester or whatever. But, you know, they've been touching on children for a very long time. A lot of us were touched as children and were told for the sake of kinship to be quiet. It was swept up under the rug. In the black church, we've seen it happen, and we've been told to be quiet and swept it up under the rug. And now what we see with this new LGBTQPIA plus children takeover is now happening in our government. And because we've been so used to just sweeping it up under the rug, we've been conditioned to believe that this is something that's normal, and none of us are speaking up. When in the world did we begin to identify children as a sexual preference? Because every letter under LGBTQIA is a sexual preference. Why and how is it acceptable today that we are to look at a child, especially school-age children, and identify them by a sexual preference?
For viewers unaware, can you explain in regards to the letter that identifies children as a sexual preference?
Well, all of them, anytime you hear them say LGBTQ children, right? We've heard this being thrown around a lot. All in our government, all in Congress, they're always talking about protect LGBTQ youth, protect LGBTQ children. But what is L? L is lesbian. That's a sexual preference, right? What is LB? What is B? B is bisexual. It's a sexual preference. So when you say LGBTQ children and you are telling me that you are teaching this in grade school from pre-K all the way up to the 12th grade, you're telling me that I'm supposed to go to a school and look at a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old and say that this child is bisexual? Let's just talk about the reality of what is taking place. They now have Americans comfortable with identifying children as a sexual preference. And when children walk around wearing LGBTQ clothing, they are now walking advertisements for sexual preference.
So, like, after being, I know you're like kind of in government circles, right? Like, has anybody slipped up and what is the rationale behind this, bro? Like, what is the point of it? That's the whole point. Like, what?
The point is that they have the point is that this is another money grab. This is all about money, because when you talk about giving children hormones, and when you talk about puberty blockers, and when you talk about performing sexual transitioning surgery, all this is about money.
Industry. So they're building a new economy.
So it's another form of medical apartheid for a certain group of people. It's all about money.
I want to talk about Biden's controversial 1994 crime bill and the role it has played in the current struggles of the black family and struggles in black neighborhoods.
Well, you talk about the crack cocaine epidemic, and you want to talk about certain sentencing disparities where we saw people that had skin color that looked like ours receive, we call them football sentences, double-digit sentences for the sale of crack cocaine, while white counterparts were receiving probation. Also, the 94 crime bill impacted us harshly with the 3 strikes you're out rule, meaning that if you had 2 prior convictions and you were convicted of something else related or non-related, then you could get life without the possibility of parole. And so we have seen America, the 4 years while Trump was in office, fight about family separation at the border. And I don't think that we've taken into consideration all of the family separation that has happened within our borders due to that 94 crime bill. So we were talking about the mass incarceration of Black Americans, and I think that has pushed us over into this epidemic where we are seeing so many households with fatherless children.
Can you also speak about the missing income? A lot of times we don't touch on that aspect in regards to when you do some time, right? It really, for the most part, it lowers your ability to earn, and also the impact of that missing income on the family.
Oh, well, when you remove someone from the family, of course, they're no longer the provider, they're now a dependent. So if you are a mother, let's just say, and your spouse has been incarcerated or the father of your children has been incarcerated, not only does all of that responsibility fall on you as the mother, but then there's also now responsibility for that person that is incarcerated. And unfortunately, in America, the laws just don't work out best for us. Even if there is a man who has gone to prison, and let's just say he had a child support order established before he went, that child support is still building up. So oftentimes we'll see a young man that's been sitting in prison for 10 or 12 years get out, want to get his life together. Well, guess what? He's $40,000, $50,000 in debt when it comes to child support. So it's incarceration. And there are some people that need to be incarcerated. But then you look on the flip side, and we talk about the 94 crime bill, the mass incarceration of Black Americans, and we understand that mass incarceration has not only impacted us through separating our families, but income, just like you said, there is a loss of income, and that person, instead of being a provider, has now become a dependent.
Can we really have prison reform in America if the economy is so dependent on the profits from the prison industrial complex?
I think that you've made a very true statement, but I do believe that there can be reform in our criminal justice system. And I say that because I've seen it happen. My own personal story of being incarcerated and giving birth to my daughter while chained to a bed with the sheriff watching. We now see that President Trump, when he was in office, he made it illegal for them to chain women to the bed while they were giving birth in prison. Also, sentencing reductions and sentencing modifications we see taking place. With the First Step Act, we've seen the release of up to nearly 20,000 people from the federal prison that have now come home. So yes, we can reform it. Will we fix all of our problems? I don't think so. But are we going to give up? Absolutely not.
All right. Can you explain more what the First Step Act is?
The First Step Act was a lot. It really was about trying to overturn Joe Biden's 94 crime bill and giving a lot of those people that had been left behind in prison during the Obama era a chance to get out and come home, because it did not apply to lifers. So even if you had a life sentence, but it was a non-violent life sentence, you wouldn't be considered for parole or able to come home. So the First Step Act gave life to all of those prisoners who had been incarcerated on those 3 strikes you're out on nonviolent crimes to have a chance to come home. Also, we saw where people were getting, let's say you talk about in federal time back then, people would get like 4 days for one. Then we saw that 85% rule come in where you had to serve 85% of your time. Well, he went back and overturned that as well. So we saw a lot of people that were supposed to serve many more years have a chance to come home. So the First Step Act was the first step to trying to reform our system and giving people that had been in prison for long periods of time a second chance to come home.
You spoke about the experience of being chained while being given birth, right? Mm-hmm. A couple of questions I have is, first one, how traumatizing is that?
It was very traumatizing. I mean, you think about people that have separation anxiety, or you think about back in the days of slavery when a woman has a child and they're selling the children on the slave box and they're separating the families. I mean, we're in America where people won't even separate a puppy from a dog before 6 weeks. So we're talking about a newborn baby, not even 24 hours old, being separated from his mother because of incarceration. And this was for a nonviolent crime. So I think I'm still a little bit traumatized.
So what's the process like if you're pregnant while incarcerated and you have the baby? Does the baby stay with you, or do they remove the baby?
Well, the baby can't stay with you because the baby can't go to prison. I mean, it's just, that's what I'm saying about this whole thing about our community being so riled up about family separation at the border. Anybody in America, you commit a crime, you go to jail, your kid's not going to jail with you, okay? Even if you run a stop sign and they decide they want to pull you over and take you to jail, your child is not going to jail with you. So it is American law that if you are arrested, you're going to be separated from your family. So what we've done in America is taken our laws and bent it for people breaking laws at the border while we've overlooked the trauma in our own communities.
I'm not trying to press too long, but I just want to know, like, does the child go with a family member or they go to the state?
It kind of depends if you have family. In my situation, I did. My mother was there, and my baby was given to my mother. But there was another woman who actually went into labor with me around the same time who did not have family, and her baby is a ward of the state.
And when they go to the state, do they tell you where the baby's going, or is kind of like you don't know?
Unfortunately for me, I haven't experienced that problem, but I'm believing that they don't know for the safety of the child.
I want to talk about medical apartheid, right? But before we do, please share some past medical experimentations done on black children most people are unaware of.
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, not only just black children, just black people, period. You got the Tuskegee syphilis experiment that happened. You talk about black slaves, the early development of medical practices where they would operate on black women without using anesthesia to see their level of pain. We see even with HIV and AIDS. I mean, we still experiencing these things to this day. We see all of a sudden there's a breakout, and then the next thing you know, it just somehow disproportionately impacts the black community. AIDS came out, and then the next thing we know, the only people who are dying of AIDS and HIV every time we heard about it were black men. We're still experiencing forms of medical apartheid to this day with what just happened during COVID. Right? We see them say all of a sudden something came from China. They said it started in China. I don't know about y'all, but I was at home watching the videos like everybody else. I seen people in China coughing and they was dying right on the spot. The whole world went crazy. Next thing we know, it left China, went all the way around the world, went to Africa. They had the lowest numbers in Africa where the most black people are. Imagine that. Then somehow it got here to America, and then all of a sudden it was disproportionately impacting black people. Not only was it disproportionately impacting black people, guess what? All of the vaccines were what? Shipped to what? Those black neighborhoods, those black communities. Same thing. Just like with Planned Parenthood, we started seeing all the black churches popping up with the COVID test. You remember in the COVID vaccines, we started seeing Juvenile and everybody talking about back that vax up. They was making songs and videos. They was giving away free dances at the strip club. Krispy Kreme was giving away free donuts. KFC and Popeyes was giving away free chicken, specifically targeting black people to go take an experimental drug, just so we can see what happens. And we fall for it every single time because we are controlled by fear and not facts.
I like that one, fear, not facts. All right, and the last thing, just what is your definition of medical apartheid?
I don't think I have a specific definition for it. I think it's just what it is. I think it's just specifically targeting a group of people for medical malpractice. That's what I believe it is. And 9 times out of 10, that specific group of people just happens to have dark skin. Abortion is another form.
And this is the last question, right? What advice would you give the sisters on government assistance trying to transition to get off of government assistance?
Keep going and don't give up. It can be hard and it can be scary, because a lot of times when you have babies and you don't have support of other people, you fall into getting dependent on that system. Like it's like a safety net. You're scared to step out because you're like, okay, well, if I stay here, at least I know my rent will be paid by Section 8. But if I step out and then something happens, what happens if I fall? I just want to say, don't be afraid to fly. You've gotta try. But as long as you are subjected to or tied to this system, then you will always be a slave to this system. We will never be free until we are financially free and out of the grasp of this government. And I mean, that means us, that means our children, because anytime you are receiving any type of government assistance, what do you have to do? You got to give them all of your information. They want birth certificates. They want social security numbers. They want your paycheck stubs every time you get paid. They want to know what school your children go to. They want your immunization records. You have to give them every aspect of your life, and everything that you think you have that's personal to you, they have access to it and control over it. So we need to break free from these systems, and we need to become financially independent so we don't have to answer to the government or anyone else.
Please speak about the transition from got in some trouble, you get out, become an author.
Yeah, I wrote my first book when I was in prison because I was going through a lot, and it was like my form of, I guess, therapy. And talking to other women that I was incarcerated with and hearing their stories gave me strength because it helped me realize that I wasn't the only one that was separated from my family or experiencing whatever I was experiencing. I wrote my first book when I was in prison. I self-published that one. It didn't do best, but to me it did something because I was now an author. And then I wrote my second book after I got out of prison, Life of a Real Housewife, which made me a best-selling author, and it also made Amazon #1 on Amazon 3 times. And I think that for me, I kind of got lucky because there were a lot of high-profile names in my story, and my story was talked about a lot all over the internet, and there were a lot of articles written about my story just because of the people that were involved. So I think I kind of had to step up being a first-time book writer, but I was sued for $30 million when I wrote my book, and I was picked up by Vibe. Vibe dropped my publishing contract. And when they dropped my publishing contract, I said, God, what am I going to do? And I heard something say, start your own publishing company and release your own story. Yeah. And that's exactly what I did. And I made the person that was actually suing them come after me because I was the only person that could actually tell my story. And I ended up winning that lawsuit and went on to continue publishing for women and helping them heal through writing, because writing is very therapeutic. From there, I went on to start American King Foundation, which is our organization for criminal justice reform. And from there, I ran for office. And then I started Auntie Angie's House as a solution to the Black maternal health crisis. And we out here and we working. And you don't have to be a member of Congress to get something done in your community.
So you just took the hustler spirit and just funneled it into something.
I had to, because I couldn't go back to prison. So, and that's what a lot of returning citizens need to do. You need to keep that same hustle, and you need to find out whatever it is that you're good at, because we're all talented. And especially if you spend some time in prison, you realize you knew how to do something. Take what you're good at and turn it into a business and keep that same hustle and break free from this system.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming out, all right?
Thank you.
Cool.